welcome to episode 316 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Miranda Barnwell,
Jessica Carr,
Andrew Swafford. Also, Jessy Alva is here. She had to step out of the room for a minute. She'll be back.
It's the ghost of Jessy.
Jessy's just taking a shower, and
Yes.
I'm literally phoning into this episode, you guys. I am on my cell phone in a moving vehicle, so we're doing it.
The titular Jessica Carr.
We're doing the dang thing.
Oh, wow. She's also driving. Cam's in the back, just sitting there doing nothing. It's a weird situation going on.
Yeah, Cam, if you wanna jump in anytime, a little more the merrier.
Cam is driving
Yeah, it's not a big thing.
He is the one operating the moving vehicle, so I'm not gonna distract him.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about movies that we saw this week in part 1 and part 2. We're going to continue our Agnès Varda series. We're talking about 1965's La Bonheur and 1977's One Sings, the Other Doesn't. Real quickly, we are covering the Toronto International Film Festival. Be sure to check out the Cinematary Twitter and website. We'll be covering that through the next week, so be looking for some quick thoughts on some movies that are playing there, at least digitally through the streaming platform. Also check out, we're going to be talking about it in a few minutes, but we got a new review from Michael O'Malley of I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So if you watched that on Netflix this past week, highly recommend checking out this review. I think it's one of the better ones that I've read across the internet, and I'm not saying that just because it's the site that we're on. So but let's go ahead and we're going to kick it off with another Netflix release relatively recently, and that is the is it, Jessica, correct me, is it the directorial debut of Isabel Sandoval, or has she been doing other things?
It isn't. This is her third feature-length film. So she has also made 2 features, and she filmed them in the Philippines. And then this one was filmed in New York City. So it's her first American feature film.
So, Lingua Franca, directed by Isabel Sandoval, just to help Jessica out since she's in the car. It's about Olivia, an undocumented Filipino trans woman, works as a caregiver to Olga, an elderly Russian woman in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. When Olivia runs out of options to attain legal status in the U.S., she becomes romantically involved with Alex, Olga's adult grandson, in the pursuit of a marriage-based green card. And then Andrew, you mentioned that I think Isabel Sandoval did multiple things, including directing, producing, writing, editing, and starring in this movie. So, Jessica, tell us about Lingua Franca.
Yeah, so it's really funny because what attracted me to this movie in the first place is that I saw on film Twitter people chunky dunking on I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And them essentially saying, I can't believe so many people are watching this film and they're not watching Lingua Franca. What's wrong with you people? And I happened to...
Man, just the huge subtweet to Willow McClay right now. Sorry, we love you, Willow.
Okay, well, and then I was thinking about posting the gif of that girl who says, why not both? Why are we, dunking on another movie? Spread the love. People have Netflix, they can watch all kinds of films. Instead of doing that, let's shine some positive light on both of them. But it is, in that person's defense who tweeted it, it did make me want to watch Lingua Franca. I was honestly okay, well, I need to check this out because someone obviously feels that it needs attention. And I'm super glad that I did because this movie is so heartbreakingly tender, and it is a story that, not everyone can tell, and it's obviously very personal to the director. And, the woman that it stars, Olivia, not only is she a trans woman, but she's also an undocumented immigrant in America, in Trump's America specifically. And Isabel was talking about how she wrote the screenplay when Trump first got elected. And there's tons of stuff weaved into the film about the fear of being an undocumented immigrant in Trump's America and the fear that you feel every day when all you're trying to do is live your life. And throughout this film, Olivia sees all of her friends who also were undocumented immigrants, but they start to get married, and they find men who will marry them so that they can get their green card, and she is unsuccessful at doing that. And part of that is because they find out that, so one of the other character, Alex, like, he is taken aback once he finds out that she is a trans woman. And so that is part of her journey and her struggle, is that there are men who are transphobic, and they find out they don't want to become romantically involved with her because of that. And so it's just such an empathetic film where you are taking a close look at someone who is a minority in so many different ways, and just trying to understand what their struggle is. I think, are we going to talk about Mulan in this first part?
Yeah, that's our next movie.
Okay, so it's really interesting because, like, growing up, I never had movies that had Filipinas in it, ever. And there was no, like, there weren't films where I could see representation for myself at all. And here is this film that I can somewhat relate to because I am a Filipina, but and I know, like, my mom and my grandma also had to gain American citizenship, and I think about it all the time, like, what if they were trying to get citizenship right now? Like, in the year 2020, when ICE is just, like, knocking down doors and showing up in unmarked vans and grabbing people, like, what would happen if my family members, like, didn't have citizenship? And I think that Isabel, like, does an amazing job at spelling that out for everyone. Like, what if that were you? And putting that person in her shoes. And the camera work in it is very, it's not anything flashy. Like, the film is very quiet, and it really focuses on its main character. It's very intimate camera work. And I read an interview with her, and she cited Wong Kar-wai as one of her influences, and you can really tell that in the film's style. But I really, really loved this movie, and I hope that more people will give it a chance and watch it on Netflix.
I really want to see it. Your description of it, where my mind is going, maybe aside from the Wong Kar-wai reference, it makes me think that it's maybe something kind of like Wendy and Lucy. Is that a fair comparison? Actually, I don't know if you've seen Wendy and Lucy, so maybe.
No, I've never seen Wendy and Lucy, but it is. She, in her Letterboxd interview, she cites a lot of slow cinema directors, and so I think that it would be fair to say that it is pretty similar to that. There is a lot of, like, fading in the editing, which I think is really interesting. It kind of, like, romanticizes what they're showing a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought that it was really good and really heartfelt, and I even, like, tweeted about it later because I was like, okay, I need to put some, like, good positive light on this movie without, like, dunking on anything else. And Isabel, like, retweeted me and also, like, replied to me and said thank you so much. And it's, like, interactions like that really mean a lot when you're a film critic and you are, like, you have a filmmaker's art that touches you and you're able to, like, share that with the world, and you have this, like, connection with them, and it's something that is so beautiful to me. So
that'll definitely be one of your favorites of the year, I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what's weird is that I was looking through Letterboxd and it said, like, the year said 2019. So I don't know.
It's probably a festival premiere. I mean, the Netflix premiere this month is definitely when the vast majority of people are getting to see it. Because this is, like, technically classified as a Netflix original movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think so. I'm not sure.
It sounds to me like you should maybe interview Isabel, but, you know, that's just out there, so we'll just leave it.
It is. Yeah. It is possible. It is a possibility.
Right.
Well, let's shift over to, I feel like one of the other big probably the biggest talked about new release of the past week, and that is the Mulan Disney reimagine, remake, whatever you want to call it, that premiered on Disney Plus for $30. I feel like this is not...
I knew that we would transition into Mulan after that. I knew.
So, Andrew, can you introduce the film a little bit?
Yeah, so the film is directed by Nikki Caro, who people might know from her coming-of-age film Whale Rider. Stars a lot of, well-known actors from Chinese martial arts films. You have people like Jet Li, Donnie Yen. You have Gong Li, who's been in several Zhang Yimou movies. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right. Chang Pei Pei, who is also in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And they're trying to make this feel like a Chinese martial arts movie, this, big action wuxia epic, which is what made me very interested in the movie early on in its marketing cycle, because I like those wuxia movies, especially Zhang Yimou movies, which this kind of evokes, at least in the aesthetic. And B, it seems like, maybe aside from Pete's Dragon, the first one of these live-action Disney adaptations to really go in a totally new direction with the subject matter. And so I had really, really high hopes. I still ended up enjoying it to a certain extent, but for the most part, I was underwhelmed and disappointed. I was hoping for something so much more polished and impactful than this ended up being. But I would like to hear y'all's thoughts on it. Jessy, you probably liked it the most out of all of us. What are your thoughts?
Well...
Jessy's back, by the way. Here she is.
I'm here. And Jessy Alva. I missed that part of the beginning. Sorry. I guess a special thing about it is that we got to watch it with our friends, social distance. We got a projector and were able to project it outside and kind of get together with our friends. So it was kind of a special experience. And
we didn't have to pay the whole $30 because we split it with friends.
We split the cost too. So, like that itself was kind of made the viewing experience just sort of special. But I was really... I feel like I'm going to sound like a broken record when you guys hear part 2, but I was really blown away by the colors in it. It was just a really pretty movie. The costumes were really vibrant, and so that part I liked about it. I think I was just... I think ultimately it just feels a little dry. I don't know... there's just something really lacking about it. Like, I think they barely, they barely make characters out of anybody in the movie. I think. But like, you could kind of argue one way or another about like the 3 kind of doofus soldier characters in the cartoon movie and how they sing about what kind of woman they want and stuff. Yeah. But I think that there's something really like fun and sweet about their friendship in the original movie, and in this there's just like hardly anything there.
Well, like there are problems with the animated movie.
Yeah.
But the animated movie has personality to an extent that this movie does not have. Like they want to make it a serious movie, so they take out the songs. But in most cases, they don't replace the songs with anything. So like they just like skip rapid fire from plot beat to plot beat in a way that doesn't allow any of like the character motivations to make sense. Like when Mulan decides she's going to disguise herself as a man and run away from home and join the Chinese military to save her father, that in the animated movie, that's like the reflection sequence, and it's like this long soul searching, and there's I think there's even like an instrumental portion where she's kind of deciding what she's gonna do and cuts her hair off and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And in this movie, she just up and does it. Like
she's just like
5 minutes after the like the army people come by enlisting people, she's like, oh well, I guess I'm going off and joining the military.
She's like, man, that's sad for Dad. Well, I guess I'll just do it instead. And, and I don't know, there's just something really dry about it that was disappointing. I don't think that it's like terrible. I just think there's nothing exceptional about it. I think, like, it might have been Jessica who put it this way, where it's like, I don't know why they just keep making these remakes, because they're not really adding anything new or all that special.
I mean, they were setting themselves up to add something new in this one. Like, I was hoping, because it's not going to be a musical, because it's not going to be a comedy, I want them to make it an action film and make the action awesome. And the action is so not awesome.
Yeah.
Like, the editing is like cheating constantly. Like, you never see blows connect. The like wow factor of like the wire fu stuff that you see in wuxia movies is like not there. I was just never in awe of and that's what I want to feel when I watch a wuxia movie. Like, my friend Jordan, who has written for the site before, hates wuxia films because he thinks they're so like unrealistic, and like, yeah, that's the point. I want them to look like amazing and otherworldly, and this mostly looks boring.
I will say something that I did like that they put in this that obviously is not in the original is the kind of queer-coded relationship between her and the witch.
There's a new character, the witch, played by Gong Li.
Yeah. And so I don't know, that was pretty cool to see, not only just kind of this sort of unsubtle like queer relationship in a Disney movie, and it's not.
I don't know if it's unsubtle.
I mean, it's there. They touch each other and like give each other the dovey eyes way more than she does with the like random dude who isn't.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was nice. But then it still ends tragically. So then
one of the things that has really soured me on the movie since first watching it is how these big Chinese stars like Gong Li and Jet Li and Donnie Yen get essentially nothing to do. Like, I don't know if you ever even see like Jet Li or Donnie Yen in an action scene in this movie. And like, why do you hire those guys if you are not going to let them show off their physicality? But the thing with Gong Li I thought was really disappointing because, like, not only is she kind of the coolest character in the movie and she's the biggest new addition, and they don't really do anything with that, but also, like, it kind of lets the movie wade into some, like, murky political territory, to be honest. Like, she's like a woman in the like rebel forces trying to overthrow the Chinese Empire, right? And she's upset that even though she's like the most badass person in this rebellion, she's not taken seriously because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And she comes to Mulan and says like, hey, the Chinese army isn't going to take you seriously because you're a woman either. Let's you and me team up and take down the Chinese empire together. And Mulan is like, no, my number one priority is defending the Chinese Empire. And like in the animated movie, it's all about her family, and now it's about empire. Like, it's weird to me. I don't like that. Anyways, we've talked a long time. Jessica, what did you think about Mulan?
I'm about to poo-poo on this movie, y'all. Yeah, basically everything you said, but also to the degree of, like, how depressing it is to watch a movie, like, whenever I was a little girl, like, the only thing that I had for representation was Mulan, and, like, she's Chinese and I'm Filipino. Like, that's how bad it was. And, like, it's just so depressing to see them take, like, all of the life out of something that you cherished when you're a child. And that's pretty much, like, the summation of the Disney remakes, right? Like, they're taking everything that we loved as children, and they're just, like, taking all of the life and all of the fun out of it, and just, making that dollar bill. So, it's not good. It's not good. Pretty much, I echo everything that Andrew was saying, but it just wasn't an enjoyable movie to watch. Like, it felt so empty and so lifeless, and I was just wondering, like, when it was going to be over with. Like, that's how bad the movie was to me. And what's really funny...
Also...
What's really funny is that you were talking about how, they took the songs out of it, but they still, said the titles of the songs in the dialogue. So that's, like, basically the same thing as singing it, right? Like, when they just said,
And, like, the reflection melody is constantly, like, soaring over these battle sequences, which honestly gave me whiplash to a certain extent because, like, when a musical motif or musical theme comes in a movie, typically it's trying to like evoke the ideas of that music when you were first introduced to it. And Reflection is this like "Who Am I" song, and like why is that showing up in the middle of this like big Chinese military battle scene? It just doesn't thematically make sense, except for the fact that this is the song that people remember from Mulan, and you're watching Mulan, and here's the big Mulan scene, so here's the big Mulan song. It's just kind of thoughtless, I thought.
Yeah, it's bad.
Everybody remembers the Christina Aguilera song in the middle of the Chinese epic.
Yes, there's that too.
It's not good.
Also, one last thing is that the metaphors and the themes are really bad.
Yeah.
Like, it constantly just like hammers home this like really silly message about like, well, the military, they usually just valorize the ideas of loyalty, bravery, and honesty. And then at the end, they're like, we're going to add another one for you, Mulan, and it's devotion to family. And I'm like, well, what's the difference between devotion to family and loyalty? Like, isn't that the same thing? But they like keep saying it over and over, and there's this like phoenix symbolism that is just like showing up every 5 minutes, and like the wings of the phoenix behind Mulan, like that shot from Game of Thrones with Daenerys Targaryen and the dragon wings behind her. Like, do you get it? Mulan is like the phoenix. She loses one identity and she gains another one. She rises from the ashes. Do you get it? Are you following along, children?
We lost Mushu and we got a phoenix. How did that happen?
Which I'm okay with losing Mushu, because Mushu is kind of like the,
Unless we get a phoenix.
Anachronistic, wisecracking, like, obviously like American insert character. Mm-hmm. But the phoenix sucks as a replacement for Mushu.
It's not good.
The one last thing I'll ask, and we can just kind of answer real quickly, is, I mean, I understand why putting Nikki Caro in the director's chair, why Disney decided to do that. But you mentioned, like, this is trying to be a Zhang Yimou film. Zhang Yimou is not dead and is actively working.
Zhang Yimou made a fucking awesome movie last year. Shadow rules.
Like, I'm just saying, like, you're Disney, you have all the money in the world. Maybe just call the guy you're trying to make the movie about, so anyway.
He probably would not have wanted to do the stupid Phoenix thing. And, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It would have been bad. He would have been like, nah. Mulan is on Disney Plus if you want to spend $30, or just wait 3 months and then watch it then. It's up to you. Or don't watch it. Moving on, we'll close it out with one of the other Netflix movie that Jessica was like, why not both with, and that is the latest from Charlie Kaufman, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which Charlie Kaufman has directed multiple movies, but this is the first one that he adapted a book and wrote the screenplay and directed it. So an adaptation by Charlie Kaufman, if you will. This one stars Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons, who are a couple. They are going to visit Jesse Plemons' character's parents at their remote farm. The parents are played by Toni Collette and David Thewlis. And that's really all I'll give on the plot, because we'll probably dig into more plot points through while talking about it. I'll be curious to hear what you all think. I know for me, I feel like for the most part, I'm relatively on board with Charlie Kaufman. I'm definitely not anti him, but I'm also not one where every time he poops it's gold type people when it comes to him. With this one, I saw somebody put saying that it's 2020 is just the beginning of this decade, and we already have like one of the best movies of the decade with this. And I was like, well, let's calm the brakes a little bit there, guys. Just because you twist up the narrative a little bit doesn't make it a damn masterpiece. But this one, I'll say I really was not on board at all for the first two acts of the movie. So the first act is like them driving to the house. The second act is them at the house, and the third act is them leaving the house. And I really, the first act was kind of just was whatever. It was what it was. When honestly they get to the house, and I'm just kind of like, I'm watching this entire interaction, and I get where people like would get, oh, this is kind of crazy, and I'm like, no, this isn't really crazy. I mean, we've all hung around white people before, right? Like, this is just hanging out with white people. It's strange, and it's uncomfortable, and they say weird stuff.
Oh my God.
And so that really didn't get me. I did, if anything was affecting it throughout the entire movie, though, is the third act for me, just kind of where it starts to kind of dig more into the philosophy that it's trying to gnaw at. And we can talk about that a little bit more later. But I mean, what about you all? How did the film kind of work, and how did those three parts kind of work for you?
I'll go, because my name is Jessy, and the actors' names are Jessy. So
They're both Jessy.
They're both Jessy, so I think I should go
That's
first.
how it works.
Representation.
There we go. Wow, it's a doozy. I think I've spent, probably everybody has spent this entire summer trying to fight off a lot of feelings, sadness, anxiety, all kinds of really good smorgasbord stuff. So I think the movie kind of tapped into something that I've been trying not to feel, trying my best, getting therapy for, trying not to feel, and it hurt. I just kind of like had to go lay down after I watched it. There's just something really I don't know, just something like uncanny and creepy and like just deeply hopeless feeling about the movie in spots, like just the way life just all of a sudden like whips forward really, really fast, and then you'll start thinking of like, oh God, am I going to be doing this my whole life? I feel like that's really, really brought to the table with the movie, just in how long you spend at the house, whipping back and forth between the parents being really, really young to just all of a sudden they're really, really old, like on their deathbed, to they're middle-aged, and I don't know. It really seeps up this. Whew, God. But I think it's also in that way kind of a pretty effective horror movie without being like
No
scary
scares.
in a traditional sense.
Yeah.
It really feels, and I wrote like a little review on Letterboxd about it. It really just feels like you're stuck in not necessarily a horrific dream, but just a bad, stressful dream. One of those dreams where you're just really trying to accomplish something or get out of a situation and you never can. You can't quite send the text. You can't quite articulate what you're trying to say. You can't quite leave the room. You sit with that feeling for a long time and it's very unsettling. And then, even after they leave the house and she's just trying to get back home. And she just tries and tries and tries and says, I really need to get home. We really need to get home. I've got to do something, and never gets there. There's just something really spooky about it, and something so good. I don't know if it's really subtle, but something so good about showing the way these characters just don't quite fit together. They really aren't a good pair, which is just the way, like, when you follow their dialogue as they're driving up to the house, they're constantly sort of like accidentally just barely interrupting each other all throughout. Like, there's just not enough like pause between what one person says and when one person starts to speak.
Somebody will end a statement and then the next person will respond to it before they finish the last word of the statement. Like, this happens around the dinner table multiple times.
So yeah, I think that it's just very, very effective constantly.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of if you can stand to feel that way or not. And I don't know what I think, but I think that, like, what's the word? Objectively, it's good, but personally, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of my feeling about the Charlie Kaufman directed by movies, Synecdoche, New York, Anomalisa, and this one. Like, I see what all of them are trying to do. They're very effective at making me feel the particular type of bad Charlie Kaufman wants me to feel. I do think there's a certain kind of, like, overbearing emotionality to his movies that I don't quite like. It puts me off. It makes me feel hopeless and cynical in a way that I don't think is productive. But I think this is probably my favorite of the three that he's directed. I prefer him when he's kind of in his when he's in a more playful, imaginative role, like being John Malkovich or Adaptation, and I also and Eternal Sunshine. I think his work is probably better handled by other people, so that they can kind of balance some of his miserableism with whimsy.
I definitely like it a lot more than Anomaly. I don't really like Anomalies, and I haven't seen Synecdoche, New York. I'd like to, but I never quite feel like I'm emotionally ready for it. And, but this is, I think I like it a lot better than the other one I've seen.
One thing that kind of puts me at arm's length to this one, though, even though it's probably my favorite of these three, is how indebted it is to referentiality. The movie is just conversations for the most part, and most of these conversations are conversations about high art of one kind or another, sometimes kind of obscure art, and there are these hidden references to things that they're not outright stating, they have a conversation about John Cassavetes, A Woman Under the Influence, and at one point in this conversation, the female character Jessy Buckley starts quoting from Pauline Kael's review, but she's presenting those words as if those words were her own. And she reads almost the entire Pauline Kael review. And it's not just that Charlie Kaufman is lifting this thing and oh, aren't you smart for catching it if you know it. But knowing that is from Pauline Kael's review is actually kind of integral to understanding the plot of the movie. There's a twist at the end, but the twist is never outright stated. You have to look for the twist, you have to figure out the twist for yourself, and the twist is hidden in these references. And if you're not familiar with not only that particular John Cassavetes movie, but specifically Pauline Kael's review of that John Cassavetes movie, and then there's also paintings and David Foster Wallace essays and Walt Whitman poems, so much intertextuality that if you're not keyed into it, and I am keyed into some of that stuff, you're just kind of locked out of the experience of the film.
Yeah, you kind of lost me there.
And my main misgivings about the movie are spoilers. We would have to talk about what that twist is to get into my main problem with the movie. So I'll let other people say what they want to say about it, and then maybe we can get into spoilers.
Yeah, before we get into that, Jessica, what did you think of I'm Thinking of Ending Things?
Okay, so this is probably my number 2 movie of the year, so I'm just gonna start with that.
The opposite of Mulan.
Really, really, really loved it, and I am a huge Kaufman fan for the most part, which is really funny because I'm generally an extroverted, optimistic person, but there is something about Kaufman movies that helps, someone like me relate to someone who is introverted and neurotic and pessimistic, and it's almost just seeing into someone else's life that you otherwise wouldn't understand. It's a cinematic experience that helps me understand someone like that and to kind of see things through their eyes and through their perspective. I had a chat with Mo Malley before this recording, and he told me to give him hell because he knew that I would have opposition in this conversation. But I do think that it is a really great film, and we can get more into the nitty gritty of why I think that when we get into spoiler territory. But without spoiling anything.
Well, I think we're there now.
Oh, do you want to do that now?
Yeah, we can do that now.
Okay, so spoilers. If you haven't watched it, then stop listening to me. But okay, so yeah, basically the reason why after my initial viewing of the movie, I really liked it, but once I started doing more reading about it and talking to people about it, I ended up loving it. And that is because I didn't know. So I haven't read the book, and I didn't know that the twist is that everything is taking place in the janitor's head, right?
The janitor who we've not referred to because he's not an important character in the movie. Like, he's barely on the sidelines of the movie, though there are these random cutaways to him.
Like,
he's the guy. Yeah.
He's the guy, though. Yeah. So he is the guy in the film that the woman is thinking about ending things with. Like, he's the dude that she's interacting with for the entire film. But we're getting these like cross-cut scenes of a janitor just doing his like day-to-day thing, living his life, and we don't find out until the end that he is the dude. All of it is taking place in his head, and she is imagined. So all of like she is an imagined character in his head, and he, perhaps this is a woman who he went on a couple of dates with when he was young and things didn't work out, but he's imagining, what his life would have been like if she was. But
also, it's possible that she is just a random woman at a bar who he hit on once, and she was actually at that bar on a date with another woman, and she blew him off, and he's just like totally fixated on this in his head, and so he like creates these fictional scenarios with her.
Okay, you're
there's
getting
also
that
like
from that one scenario that she mentioned. Okay.
There's also I listened to the Slate spoiler special, Dana Schwartz's podcast. Dana Schwartz, is that right? Am I getting her mixed up with somebody else? Okay, yeah. And she talked about this real life story of a janitor who I'm forgetting his name right now. But there's an echo somewhere. Of a janitor who died in like rural America, and in his house they found like some of the longest manuscripts ever written, like books that are hundreds of thousands of pages long. One of them was his autobiography that was thousands of pages long, but it never got out of his childhood. And like there was a point where he got to a point where in his story where he witnesses a tornado, and there's like hundreds of pages from the perspective of the tornado, and like Dana Schwartz was arguing that like this movie is inspired by that, and trying to create a character like this is like very lonely but very intelligent man who kind of like lives a life in his head. And I guess this kind of brings me to my misgiving about the movie, that I don't like the way this ultimately treats that character. The title of the film has a double meaning to it. The very, very first scene, you hear Jessie Buckley say, "I'm thinking of ending things," and the way she's talking about it makes you think she's talking about suicide. And then, time passes, and it becomes clear that, no, she's thinking about breaking up with her boyfriend. But then once you understand the twist, you know that, oh, the janitor actually is old and lonely and, sad, forever alone vibes. And he is actually thinking about suicide. And Cam is going to get mad at me for making this comparison because we had an argument about it, but it's like the incel movie for people who dismissed Joker as being an incel movie. And like there's a scene at the end of the movie where the janitor has a conversation with a cartoon pig with maggots crawling out of his stomach. And there's a metaphor here. It's equating the janitor to the dead pig with maggots coming out of his stomach. And the pig says, well, somebody's got to be the dead pig with maggots coming out of his stomach. And kind of implying that, like, there are some people that are just so ugly and awful, and they're such big losers that, like, nobody's ever going to want to be with them. And that's just your role in life. You're just going to be forever alone, and there's really no hope because it's a Charlie Kaufman movie, and, you want to kill yourself, maybe you should. I didn't like the implication there at all.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree that that's like the implication of what does that scene mean then? I think that it is a memory that he had when he was young. So like I'm assuming that he was raised on a farm, and that is a scenario that he saw when he was young. And so when he's imagining that, like that is something that is in his head, as in like, yes, like this is something I'm imagining when
But
death
this memory
is, like,
is
coming
not
for
being
me.
plucked out of nowhere with no context. This is a conversation that happens after he has imagined a fictional life with a pretty girl, and as he is walking towards his death, and the pig says, "Somebody's got to be the dead pig with maggots coming out of his stomach." Like,
Right, like
how do you
it
not
is
get that meaning from
possible
that?
that he is feeling sorry for himself because in his head, like he is dying alone, and obviously if he wanted to kill himself, then that is something that he is imagining about himself. But that is like bringing us to more understanding of a character who doesn't love themselves. So I don't think it's like Charlie Kaufman being like, yes, you should think that this janitor is like a pig filled with maggots. Like, I don't think that that is what he was trying to do, because I believe that with this film, like Kaufman is asking for sympathy for someone who is lonely like that, like asking for sympathy, asking for empathy of that character. And the reason why I think that is because, as like, he's like trying to give her his slippers again, and she says, no, that's okay. And it's like him wanting to share his life with this person, but she obviously is not giving in, and she says goodbye to him, but she hugs him. And it is like I cried like whenever the scene happened, because I felt like it was a very like empathetic scene of like, yes, it is really sad that this person is imagining this and that he had a missed opportunity with this woman, but we shouldn't, like, he doesn't hurt anybody in the movie, which is why I disagree with the incel thing. Like, are we gonna call like every lonely man an incel? Like, that's pretty ridiculous.
Well, we're just retreading the conversation I had with Cam. But I'm not using incel here to mean like the specific ideology of people who are used the Reddit forum incel. I'm just using like the definition of the word, like people who are involuntarily celibate because they cannot attract a mate, right? And I don't think that Charlie Kaufman wants us to hate this character. I agree with you that Charlie Kaufman wants us to pity this character, because I think that Charlie Kaufman probably sees himself in this character. I mean, this movie, Anomalisa, Synecdoche, New York, these are all movies about like miserable neurotics, and that's like an auteurist stamp, right? I mean, I don't think that Charlie Kaufman, like, I mean, I sympathize, I understand the rationale why he maybe sees himself that way, but I don't think it's a healthy mindset. I don't think it's a good way to think about yourself. And I think this movie just like indulges in that worst self-image to such an extent that like I don't really see how it's helpful.
Yeah, I disagree. Like, I don't agree with that at all, and that's fine. But the other thing that I was going to say is like, if you just watch the film without knowing anything about the book, like the woman is the protagonist. Like, she is the one who is the lead character in the film, and you can see it at this is how I read the film when I saw it, without knowing anything about the book, which is like it's about a woman who is thinking about ending things with this man, and then she imagines two forks in the road, one where she does end it with him and one where she doesn't. And I think that like it has like a very interesting like feminist reading to me, because like she is forced to think of, like, I think that in society, like, they think that women have to support a man in order for him to be successful, and she's imagining like, okay, if I just stay with this guy, like, it doesn't matter about my happiness, but if I stay with him, like, he will win awards. And that is like, to me, what the speech is at the end. And like, all of those things can still connect in the movie if you read it that way, and you don't read it like with the whole thing in the janitor's head, which is why I like the film more, because I think it's effective on both levels.
Speaking of the speech at the end, also you have to know A Beautiful Mind, and you have to know Oklahoma, and specifically the stage version of Oklahoma, to make sense of like those last three scenes of the movie. And I agree with you that Jessie Buckley is the main character, and I think that the thing that's most compelling about the movie is her performance, to be honest. And there's something about her performance and just how strong it is that kind of resists the frame narrative of the story. Like, she is a figment. She is this, like, imagined thing in the janitor's head. But she comes alive, the character comes alive so much through Jessie Buckley's performance that it's almost like, even though she's fake in this already fake world of the movie, she's kind of like turning on her creator in a way. And according to Michael, that's a bigger thing in the book. Like, the character kind of becomes self-aware and kind of turns on the narrator of the book. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that that's the strongest thing about it. On a related note, I'm not a fan of whatever thing that Toni Collette is doing right now in her career. Like, between this and Hereditary, I just can't stand it. I'm sorry. Like, people are talking about how she needs an Oscar for Hereditary, and like, it's such a like loud, screechy, like unbelievable performance that I like, it takes me out of the movie constantly.
That this was one of her more just like tame, chilled out performances.
It's still on that spectrum.
Like, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of Ending Things is on Netflix, but we're gonna take a quick break and then we're gonna jump into the dual features of Agnès Varda in part 2. So stick around. Hello, Cinematary. This is Zach, your host, and I'm going to use this midpoint in this week's episode to let you know a little bit about what's happening on both the website and the podcast. So first off, I know for a very long time we asked you not to give us any money. Well, things have changed. We want that money. I'm just kidding. We just want like $5 a month for the rest of your life. But we're doing a Patreon, and I promise this is all in good fun. Patreon.com/Cinematary. I'm sure you've heard us mention it at the end of the episode. We are doing this in order to pay for our writing that is happening on the website. We have a wonderful breadth of writers who are all giving a lot of time and effort to come up with reviews and share their thoughts on the website, and so we wanted to just give back to them in that way. And so that is why we created our Patreon page. So again, for $5 a month, you can get exclusive content from the staff. Right now we have our hit series Film Theory and Chill, which takes a piece of film theory each month and then deconstructs it in a way that makes it a little bit more accessible. And then we end that episode usually with just us rambling about whatever is on our mind at that period of time. It's for some people, I guess. But you can find that on patreon.com/Cinematary. Please consider, making that donation each month just to help show these writers your appreciation for what they do. Another easy way to kind of keep up with what's happening on Cinematary is signing up for our free newsletter. So if you missed an episode, if you weren't paying attention to social media and you missed maybe a review or something, or a video essay or something that we posted, this is an easy way to keep up with all of that. So each Sunday we send out a note. It goes straight to your inbox. It gives you the latest podcast episodes, what's happening on the Patreon page, and the last 2 reviews that are on cinematary.com. This is a great way to keep up with what's happening, and it's a nice way if you forget to go, oh, hey, I'm not, just chilling out on a Sunday. I'm having some coffee, doing Sunday things. Here, I'm going to check out what Andrew wrote about something, or what Nathan wrote about something. Just, we got that stuff going. So you can find that on the website, cinematary.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. Again, it's free. And finally, the easiest way to support this show is to go on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a rating and review. This is just how the algorithms work. I know every show asks you to do this, but honestly, if you could take 30 seconds to a minute and do this, it would greatly, help us. I mean, this helps us just as much as, signing up for the Patreon or letting people know on social media that you listen to Cinematary and you enjoy it. All of that stuff is very helpful. So give us a rating and review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to the podcast, and share it on social media. Let people know that Cinematary is around. So again, consider donating to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cinematary. Sign up for the free newsletter and then give us a rating and review on your podcaster app. Well, that is way too much of me talking. You're about to hear more of me talking, so I apologize in advance, but thank you for listening, and let's get back to the show.
Plus papa que le pape ou le roi, le juge ou le docteur ou le législateur qui me feront la loi. Violette biologie n'est pas destin et la loi de papa ne vaut plus rien. Mon corps est à moi et c'est moi qui sais si je veux ou pas.
And we are back with part 2 of episode 316 of Cinematary. We have lost Jessica. I guess you could say one podcast, the other doesn't for part 2.
Oh. We're off to a good start of this part 2.
Now, along with Jessica, the entire listening base has also left. In this part, we're going to talk a little bit about 2 Agnès Varda films, and we're going to kick it off with 1965's La Bonheur. And it is, of course, written and directed by Agnès Varda. The film stars Jean-Claude Drouet, Claire Drouet, and Marie-France Boyer. I was trying to figure it out. Nobody ever has, like...
Can we, by the way, while we're talking about French pronunciations, can we just call this movie Happiness? Because this is such a hard
La Bonheur
title to pronounce.
But then it sounds like you're saying
opinion.
boner, and it's funny. La Bonheur.
Yeah, if we want to call it Le Bonheur, then I think that's perfectly acceptable.
That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what's going
That's
on.
true. It is happiness. Well, happiness is about, in suburban Paris, young Francois appears to live a happy, contented existence with his wife, Therese, and their 2 small children. Despite his apparent satisfaction, Francois takes a mistress named Emile, and remarkably doesn't feel the least bit of remorse for his philandering. While he is able to justify loving both women, Francois's infidelity results in tragic, real-life consequences for both him and his family. This is just more Zach was enamored with it, but the 2 lead actors, like the actual married couple, were actually married in real life, which takes the whole thing to a level that we could probably get into. On the scene where the husband is telling his wife about the affair, Amy Taubin, the critic, recounted what Varda thought about the whole experience in her Criterion essay, saying, discussing the scene in an interview with critic Gerald Puri in 1977, Varda remarked that at this point, Therese's reaction should have been, quote, "Go to hell, I want to be alone with you." But if Varda had such a thought in 1964, it's not evident in the film. One of the remarkable aspects of Le Bonheur is that regardless of how you, I, or Varda would act, or would like to think we would act in a similar situation, there is no doubt that Therese's response to her husband's infidelity is the only response this character in these circumstances can have. And in 1966, the New York Times said, mood and dialogue are secondary in Le Bonheur. What is important is that Miss Varda, perhaps with tongue-in-cheek, has fashioned a simple fable for our time that is highly unlikely and blithely flouts moral values and Hollywood conventions, but nevertheless constantly captivates the eye and mind, if not the heart. I'm not sure what to do with that New York Times reviews, but, that's... What are you gonna do?
It captures the heart.
Yeah, it seems a little dismissive, but let's go ahead and jump into it. I had not seen this movie before, but I know Andrew, you and both you had seen it, and Miranda had seen it. Jessy, had you seen this movie before?
No, this is my first time.
We've kind of gone on a little Agnès Varda journey these last couple of days. Jesse's not seen any Varda. We watched Cleo, and then Le Bonheur, and then One Sings, the Other Doesn't over the past few nights.
Well, yeah. How about you? You guys kick it off. What did you make of this one, Jessy? And I guess kind of what's been your impression of Agnès Varda so far?
Yeah. Well, I guess just on a aesthetic level alone, I think the movie is just really beautiful. It's just like immediately you're hit with this like perfect like floral landscape, and they're just frolicking together, and they're so happy, and their family is so beautiful. And I was constantly remarking throughout the movie, oh my gosh, these flowers, because every scene has perfect flowers.
Not even in the outdoor scenes either.
Every scene. It was
yeah.
driving me nuts. I want this many flowers in my life. So it's a really gorgeous movie. The people in it are really gorgeous too. But I guess, so beyond that, I was really not sure what to make of it when we finished it, because it's kind of one of those movies where I can't tell if they're trying to make you feel guilty if you get horny in it, or like what exactly you're supposed to be wanting and feeling for this, because like I think that the actor who plays the boy, what's his name?
The boner?
Yeah, the man himself, Bill Hader.
French Bill Hader.
French hot Bill Hader. I can't remember the guy's name in the movie, but I think he brings such a like genuine portrayal of like a genuine affection and love for both the women and the families in a way that I don't think is really doesn't feel like it's mocking. And I think there are a lot of directors who make characters who are like obviously mocking, and I don't think that she really does that with him. Maybe that's what you're supposed to read it as, but I didn't see it that way. I think his love for his family is just so genuine and almost palpable, but he also really cares for this woman. And then when it all disintegrates, I feel like, oh crap, was I supposed to give spoilers?
I think we can give spoilers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when it all disintegrates, I can't tell if she's trying to say, like, yeah, look at this doofus, or if she's trying to, this is a thought I had today, is she trying to say, like, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could, like, just genuinely love multiple people and experience could be like this, but unfortunately the way we look at things now, it can't be this way, and isn't that kind of tragic? I can't tell. I think either reading makes for an interesting movie.
I think most of the criticism I've seen of it seems to lean towards the men are trash reading of the movie. Like, I've seen it described as a horror movie. I've seen it described on Letterboxd as a happiness trap, where she is using all the elements of the film to like put you into this guy's mindset, and then like show and like very quickly kind of pull the rug out from under you and show you how toxic it is when she commits suicide.
Yeah.
But I do sense like a great amount of generosity behind the camera towards this character. And my first exposure to this movie was Varda talking about it in the documentary we saw at TIFF last year, Varda by Agnès, where she described the movie as an attempt to put pure happiness on screen, because she felt like it was seen as cliche to film happiness. Like, you should, if you want to make high art, you make high art about like suffering and the human condition and shit like that. And she wanted to make a movie about people who are genuinely happy with their lives. And of course it kind of like gets all tangled up when the way that one person wants to pursue happiness does not gel with another person's ideal. But she seemed to not, like, in the interview in that documentary, she never indicated that she hated this character, or that it was like some sort of takedown of this male character. She did describe the film as like a beautiful ripe peach with a worm in it. Which I think is a very apt simile.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you could just take it as like this is art Agnès Varda, like, just laughing at men, saying like men are trash, something like that. But I feel like just also watching her other movies, she seems like she has pretty thoughtful and maybe outside the box thoughts on love and like womanhood, and
she also seems to have like a great deal of affection for like all of her characters. I don't think I've seen an Agnès Varda movie where it seems like she is skewering her protagonist.
But I guess it just seems like she's got like a pretty open-minded view on how relationships can be and how love can be from other movies and examples of relationships in other movies.
And of course, it's not, technically speaking, a movie about polyamory. Like, there's a reading of it where, like, when he comes out to his wife about having another woman, it's almost like him coming out as queer, as like a poly person. But crucially, he is betraying her trust. He is actually cheating on her for much of the movie. So, I mean, after she commits suicide, I do think the rest of the film kind of feels like a horror movie, in that you hear a lot of the same music from the first half repeated, but now it has kind of like a darker, more sinister tone to it. You see all these montages repeated, the same kinds of montages you saw the first wife doing at the beginning of the film. You then see the second wife doing, and the final shot kind of bookends the film, where you see the family walking hand in hand in these red outfits, which is what you see in the very opening shot. And it seems to suggest that, in this guy's worldview, women are just kind of replaceable, right? Like, if the second woman can kind of like fill the role of mother and housewife, it doesn't really matter that much that he lost the first one.
But it almost seems like in that case, like, happiness is almost like superficial and artificial. Like, there's no real depth to it. Like, here is this another woman that I can just replace. And also, like, who is that happiness for? So, yeah.
Well, that's what she, Jessy, you started your review kind of talking about how luscious and beautiful this movie is. And that's one of the things I've read a lot, kind of reading on the movie, is she sets you up with all of this beautiful imagery and just the colors, and like this was, I don't know if this one was on our movies to watch during the fall list that we did, the Cinematary Canon list, but it absolutely should be. There's like the last scene where they're all like in these sweaters and it's like you have the leaves falling. There's just aesthetically, it's just so overwhelming with like impressionism and just beauty that it is. It's like that's like the happiness that you are eliciting through this whole movie, and then you're kind of gut punched as well, and then at the end it's just like, well, what does all this beautiful imagery and these colors and these flowers and then everything like really mean to me? Which I think it's such an effective technique of filmmaking. Miranda, what about you? What was your first impression of seeing the film, and then did that change any when you watched it for the episode?
I watched this a few years ago for the first time in one of my classes, and I think my impression of it, I just remember what my teacher said about it. I vaguely remembered the plot itself, but just how like creepy and like unsettled she felt at the end when it's like there is that montage of her doing the same things that the first wife did. And watching it this time, I also like was overwhelmed with the colors, and I thought the cinematography was great. And I also really liked the fading out into different colors throughout instead of just to black. But this time, it's kind of that same like feeling I have whenever I watch Vertigo. Like, I enjoy Vertigo, but I always feel so uncomfortable after I watch it because it seems so like I feel like that the person that I would be in that role is just completely like, there is no individual, right? Like, it's so superficial. And like, there's that part where he says, well, he's talking to Emil and he's like, well, if you had come along first, like, we would have gotten married. And that's horrible to say to somebody.
This is honestly a great pairing, Le Bonheur and Vertigo.
Yeah.
I think that those movies have a lot of...
So that was and I thought the music that she chose for that last section was really effective as well. But yeah, unsettling.
Oh, sorry, just the use of Mozart pieces throughout the entire film is so... There's something like nice about it, but then also it kind of adds to the unsettling feeling that you kind of feel the entire time.
Yeah, she in the doc we saw last year, she talked about Mozart as being like a composer who captured pure happiness very well, but there was always like kind of a specter of death hanging over the music.
Yeah, sorry I interrupted you though, Miranda.
Just that I left pretty unsettled. So I enjoyed it. But it's like, again, with Vertigo, I only watch it maybe like once a year because I don't like that feeling I have afterwards. So, but it is. But she did a very good job. So, I guess that's what I have.
It's funny because, like, as watching this for the first time, you do get so consumed in the imagery, and then this has nothing to do with like the makeup of the. Well, I guess it does have to do with the makeup of the film, but like. I was getting so annoyed with him because, we're sitting here in our stupid country and we have like a pandemic and dumb politicians and California's like on fire right now, and I'm like, yeah, this is stuff that we got to deal with. And then I'm like looking at this asshole, and he's just like, this I like this apple orchard, but I like to go to this apple orchard too, it's just like I like to go to, and I'm just like, fuck you,
it's
man.
Just super freaking hard for me.
Like, this is the prime problem that you have, is you're like, I love both of these people. I'm like, that seems great. Congratulations. But I think that's like it. You do kind of get there. It's like this kind of uncomfortableness of like you get like a little bit caught up in the romanticism of just, you have this, this Mozart music behind it, and you have these wonderful pastel colors and just the kind of production design of it, the cityscape, the places they like, the place in the country that they go and just like spend the day like napping and sitting around in the woods. There is something it kind of pairs well with both of these films that we're going to talk about, but there is just like this wonderful lived in quality. Like, you almost can just like settle in as if you are like, settling into a house or something. There's something comforting about both of these movies and like the stories to an extent that they're telling.
If I could say one more thing about this one before we transition to One Sings, the Other Doesn't, is one thing I like about Varda in general is just her eye as a photographer, as a cinematographer. I don't know if she did the cinematography for this film or not, but there are so many little quirks to the cinematography and the editing that feel quintessentially Varda to me. Like, she will often kind of like have her attention sort of dart to and fro to things happening on the fringes of a shot. Like, there are two scenes in particular that stand out to me. One is the first time the Francois has coffee with the woman from the post office, and like the camera is not centered on her face. She's kind of off to the side of the frame, and you're seeing these like conversations happening behind her and people walking in and out of the place behind her, and like, it's very in the sound mix, like you hear those things louder than you hear their conversation, and it's kind of an odd sense of like just busyness and life happening all around these characters. And the other scene that stands out to me is when he first goes to her apartment for the first time, and like the reverse shot when they open the door is like really quick back and forth, like the camera is just like doing these smash cuts back and forth between their faces. And then as he walks into the apartment, there are these quick glances at things sitting in the corners and along the walls, but his attention is like continually brought back to her. Like, he's there to fix the cabinet, but he can only look at the cabinet for like half a second before he looks back at her again. And I just think that Varda does a great job of like capturing people's attention on film. It doesn't really show up quite as much in One Sings, the Other Doesn't, but I think it also shows up in Cleo from 5 to 7 quite a bit.
Anybody else have any final thoughts on happiness before we move on?
Great movie. My favorite Varda movie.
Yeah, it's really great. And honestly, good tip from Miranda on a pairing of this and Vertigo, because honestly, that sounds really perfect. So
I'll need a drink.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the next one we're going to talk about is One Sings, the Other Doesn't. This one came out in 1977, and Agnès Varda, of course, wrote and directed it. And it stars Valérie Mérès and Therese Liotard. And it follows two French women who have a close friendship through years of personal growth and societal change. Varda on the film at its release, quote, "If I put myself on the screen, very natural and feminist, maybe I'd get 10 people in the audience. Instead, I put two nice young females on the screen and not too much of my own leftist conscience. By not being too radical but truly feminist, my film has been seen by 350,000 people in France." And Ebert on the film in 1977 said, "The movie's final passages are among the best. Palm comes with her child and friends to spend some time on the farm, and so several generations are brought together as the two friends approach the middles of their lives. There's a picnic and kids playing and wine and singing, but of too many songs, and what Varda's doing in a sneaky way is making her case for feminism in a lyric voice instead of a preachy one." So this one was one that I had seen before. I know, Andrew, you had seen this as well. But Miranda, I'm going to start with you. What did you make of One Sings, the Other Doesn't?
Yeah, so it was my second time watching it, and again, I don't really remember too much about watching it the first time, but I really enjoyed it this time around. And obviously, in particular, their relationship, and maybe it's just because time has passed, but it seems very real in that, there's a person that you're with and a life event happens, something that, is important to the two of you, and then you separate, and you keep in touch by like letters and over a period of time. And there is something about that person that you think of them whenever you're like in a crisis on your own of like, well, what would this person do? So I just thought the depiction of, the female friendship was very lovely. And yeah, let's see, I know I have a lot more to say, but I liked it. I think for me personally, I think it just tended to drag just a tad bit too long in the end, but otherwise I thought, it was really good. So I guess there's that.
Yeah, no, it kind of hangs around. That seems to be the common complaint I saw in reviews of it, is that it hangs around too long. Especially since like the first little part of it, when like the two of them are kind of meeting, and and you have the photographer husband, and like that whole kind of first part of their friendship seems to be kind of moving so quickly, and then you jump into the portion where they're bouncing. They're not in the same place together, but they're bouncing back between the two postcards and stories, of their lives to that point. It's very fast, fast paced. That once I think Apple leaves and goes to Iran, and that whole plot line happens, that it does kind of slow it down a little bit. But like I said, with the last film, there is like this really loving, familiar quality to it. It's kind of interesting. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit more later. But I found it really interesting when I found that quote from Agnès Varda, and then just kind of reading other things about this film on like how it kind of treats the feminist politics. And it's kind of useful to know that this came out around the time, or at least is set in the time of May 68, and a lot of civil unrest in France at that time. And so this it's kind of like one of the peak times outside of like the French Revolution for for protesting in France. And so it seems like it's such an interesting view of kind of activism and social activism, in terms of like how it's presented on film. I think it's done in such a informed and loving fashion. But Andrew, you and Jessy, what did you all make of the film?
So we actually did not watch it together, so I've actually not talked to Jessy about this movie. What did you think?
Well,
this is the one that you rated highest on Letterboxd,
yeah.
of all three.
I don't know, I'm kind of struggling because I think Miranda kind of hit on most of the things I was going to say, which is good. But just that I think that there's just so much sweetness to this movie.
Yeah.
Watching these two women grow up, and I don't know, and they're such different people, but their friendship just stays really pure the whole time. They really care for each other, even though, they don't see each other very much over the 14 years that pass, and they can only talk to each other intermittently. It reminded me of a friendship of mine. We don't necessarily talk every day or every week, or sometimes not even like every month. Like, some time will pass, but it just seems like we can so easily just kind of pick up where we left off with stuff, and I feel like so comfortable with her. And so it's just, I don't know, it's sweet to see that, and sweet to see like I don't know, just this like proud and like tender portrayal of womanhood, girlhood, and transitioning into womanhood. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's like lately I feel like there's been a lot of movies come out, like it's almost becoming a cliche where there's so many movies coming out lately about abortions, which is like good. I mean, it's nice that we can be talking about that openly, but it's just to see like that this was made, what,
77?
Yeah.
Is that right?
And I mean, it's got everything any of these movies that are coming out now have, and then also 14 years of tender friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I could kind of like connect that point to the point we've been hanging on about pace and how long the movie is. You know, that was my initial critique of it, was that it was, because this is the second time I'm watching the movie. The first time I thought it was a little too long, a little shaggy. I got bored in parts. But rewatching it, you know, really getting the feel of like, oh, this is a movie about like people's lives, like not just a specific event or a specific conflict, but like lots and lots and lots of things that happen to them. And a lot of the things that happen to them are things that in our culture we think of as like these life-ending or life-ruining events, right? Like there's the abortion, of course. There's the one woman's husband commits suicide. There's a woman who like basically swears she'll never get married, gets married, and then later has a baby, and then later gets divorced. And there's lots of other things too that I can't even think of right now. But I mean, the movie kind of like doesn't linger on any of these things that long. They're all just kind of part of this larger tapestry of these women's lives. And it seems to me that one of the broader points here is that like these are not like life-ending events. Your life will go on, and you will continue to like form fulfilling friendships and you know continue to grow old ones. And it's just like a really life-affirming movie. Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the kind of easy pace that it settled into this time I watched it.
And I like that there's just, you know, she follows these women. There's never a judgment. There's never, like, a sense of humor, like, oh, yeah, isn't Apple just so, like, frilly and hippie? Like, no, I think, like, she genuinely loves the character, Varda does, and like, shows the character's, like, growth, you know, and, confidence in her choices, and there's no, I just don't feel like there's any judgment to it. It's just like, yeah, this is what Apple's doing, and that's great for her, you know, at all times. And I don't know, it's just, it's so sweet, and you know, just so loving to women. I think just showing, you know, you can choose to be a mother now. You can choose to wait.
Right.
Always do that, you know, when you're ready. And there's nothing not feminist about getting married or choosing to be a mom or not choosing to be a mom. That's the feminist journey. Is like you choose.
They champion the right to abortion as vehemently as they champion the beauty of being a mother at the end of the movie.
Yes, it's so really sweet. Everybody's just like dressing up in bellies and singing the dumbest songs I've ever read about like how great it is to be a balloon. But it's so sweet. Like I still don't even feel like she's making fun of them. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
They're just spinning around with like rainbows and clouds in the background saying it's great to be a balloon.
And this is also like the other movie, like a beautiful movie to look at. Like the rainbows and balloons scene, I think is like a great encapsulation of this movie's like artistic palette that it's working in. Like it's these really like vibrant pastel sounds like an oxymoron, but that's kind of like what I keep coming back to. There's also like the scene where she's like in the hammock with the fan with like the teal background behind her, and there's like the beautiful scene by the riverside at the very, very end.
What's the other girl's name? The one who doesn't sing?
I don't know. We'll just call her the one that doesn't sing.
Okay, so like it spends a lot of time in the latter half of the movie just like in her little patio garden, and I just want to live there. It's perfect.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole point. So many good flowers.
Yeah.
Like
also, this is a little bit off topic, but baguettes.
Yes!
We gotta talk about baguettes.
Okay.
We've been watching 3 Agnès Varda movies in 3 days, and in every movie, Jessy has spotted a baguette. And in this one, apparently, you saw like 4 baguettes.
Yes. There's also one, I don't know if it counts, but it was several pieces of bread, so I was led to believe that it was probably at one time a baguette.
Are we gonna count the complete asshole moment in La Bonheur where the guy runs over to the lady who he does not know, grabs the top of her bread and runs off, and I was like, fuck
that
you.
is a really sympathetic moment. Yeah.
Yes. I was low for him. Unforgivable, Bill Hader.
Like, my dude, you can't just grab people's bread. That's not how the world works. Yeah. I love it when one sings, the other doesn't, like, just how much of, like, a giving spirit the movie has. You know, again, like, it's funny that she kind of is like, yeah, you know, I couldn't make this too radical, but you also have these characters who are able to still, like, filter what they're passionate about, you know, throughout the various points in their lives. You would think that maybe Suzanne would have the abortion, have her husband kill himself, and then kind of, you know, become a shell into herself. But then she, like, you know, creates this whole advocacy group and is, like, doing all this advocacy work and is, like, really involved in all of this, you know, kind of turning her you know, her memory into something that can help a lot more other, you know, a lot of other people. And then you have Apple, who seems to, you know, I think you could probably say that she kind of lives up in the clouds often, but there's something, she's one of those people who, you know, maybe she does to an extent, but there's, like, this genuine spirit to it. Like, it's it's fine. Like, she seems to, like, you know, make solid decisions, you know. Sometimes she seems to kind of go off course a little bit, but at the same time, like, everything she does is, like, to give back to other people. And so at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, that's still admirable, and you kind of like her for that quality.
She really believes in herself, like, always. She always really believes in herself, and she's very firm in, like, the choices she makes. And it's just refreshing to see. Like, she argues with her parents, but she never like, seems upset, really. She's just like, no, I disagree. It's okay, this and this. And, like,
the parent system needs to be reformed.
And they're like, you asshole. And she's like, no, I'm not an asshole. This is just what it is. And I don't know, she's just so confident, and I love that.
A great character moment for her is in one of the music scenes in the latter half of the movie, where she's, like, she's on someone's shoulders wearing a big dress so that it covers the person she's underneath, or she's on top of.
Yes.
And she is topless. Yes. Right? And she's, like, in this room, like, dancing without a shirt on, and then, like, her husband shows up and she gets down. Boyfriend at the time, you're right. She gets down and she puts a shirt on, and the shirt is just like...
Yes! The shirt is just like a black and white photocopy of her boobs.
Just want to make sure you can see these at all times.
Yes! It's so cute. There's something so cute about it, though. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then she puts a little shawl on over it.
Well, she seems like somebody who you'd always, like, you always want to hang out with her. like she always has something going on. It may not, like, actually be happening in the real world, but, like, in Apple's world it's happening. You're like, yeah, this seems like a fun like, I'm gonna go spend my day living in Apple's world. That sounds super fun.
They weren't, like, bad to listen to.
I mean, for God's sake, she renamed herself Apple. Yeah. So
what were you about to say?
I was going to say, the songs, like, they're not bad to listen to, but the lyrics are just such dog shit. Like, they're so stupid.
Okay, you say dog shit, but there's a song where the lyrics are, Frederick Engels once wrote that in the family, the woman is the proletariat and the man is the bourgeoisie. He was right. Papa Ingalls was right.
Like, can you imagine? Like, it all sounded good, but can you imagine listening to a song where those were the words? You'd just be looking at the songwriter like, what?
I mean, they're really silly protest songs where, like, the message is the lyric. Like, every lyric is just a message. There's not a lot of, like, symbolism or lyricism to them. Yeah.
I don't know. I want a T-shirt now that says Papa Ingalls was right.
Papa Ingalls was right. Cemetery.com. Let's print them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Miranda, what did you make of the two the two characters? I mean, were you I don't know, did you like spending time with them?
I did. Yeah. I liked both of them a lot, and like I said, I think I really enjoyed, like, the kind of like how they thought about each other when they were doing, like, making a decision. Like, I particularly liked the part where Suzanne is writing a letter to Apple about the doctor who is married at the time, and she's, like, going on and on and on about him. And then Apple's just like, forget that guy, move on, find somebody else who's right for you, and that's it. And I was like, oh, that is so relatable right there. But yeah, and I agree that Varda isn't judging of any of the characters, and what I do appreciate too is how she's okay with like growth of, you know, first Apple, you know, it's like, I don't want to get married. I don't think maybe she doesn't explicitly say she doesn't want to have kids. Maybe she does. But as her life goes on and progresses, it's, you know, she finds somebody that she really communicates with. And then, I don't know, like, just like you guys all said, like, there's just such generosity towards the characters that...
She also, like, changes her identity halfway through the movie, right? Like, her name was an Apple at the beginning of the movie. She just changes her name, and then, you know, she tells Suzanne that, and she's like, oh, you're Apple now. Cool.
Well,
and then,
funny,
like, never remarked upon.
Well, I don't even know if it did remark on. Like, they just started... She just started signing her letters Apple, and they were like, oh, okay, I guess her name is Apple.
Yeah.
It's like the end of the movie when it's doing like the epilogue and it's just hovering over different people, and I'm like, you never even told me this person's name one time in the movie. Now you're telling me how their life goes on.
And like, obviously this is a movie about cis women, but the original tagline of the movie was like, I think it's a paraphrase of Simone de Beauvoir. It's one is not born a woman, one becomes one. So I mean, like, if you wanted to maybe read like a trans subtext in the movie, you could do that, I guess.
You know, I feel like a lot is generally made, especially, you know, more recently when it comes to movies, and it's like, oh, well, this is gonna have this perspective in mind because it's directed by a woman. And I think Agnès Varda is such an interesting mind, especially when she's making her films. And so I guess Miranda and Jessy, for you all watching this, what was something that you kind of felt was reflected in a way that you wouldn't see if this was directed by just some random male director?
I mean, I think just her approach, right? Like, the idea of going back through postcards. Oh, and maybe this isn't just for, you know, women or whatever, but like the part where she says, like, you know, I'm thinking all these things that I'm saying to you, but I don't have the time to write you, so I'm going to just put it in a postcard, because women are, like, especially she's busy, Suzanne's busy because she has her kids and she's running the center, like, just like little details like that I don't necessarily think that I've seen. That's a lie. I think there's a few things in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. But on the whole, like, there are tiny details that I just don't think, and I think it's more about how women interact with each other, and just that, like, those small details of their communication with each other that I think is lost. And there's something like you said, Jessy, it's just like so tender, and it just like it makes your heart warm and fuzzy, and you're like, this is so nice to see this. Like, it's just nice. Like, it makes me happy. So, I don't know. I guess in the dialogue, or just, you know, I don't know. What about you, Jessy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something like that. I don't know if I can really put it into words, but it's this really, like, careful precision with the things that she'll hover on. Just like, you know, Andrew and I also watched Cleo from 5 to 7, and it'll just, like, spend a long time, I don't know, just trying on different hats in a hat store, and her little friend giving her, I don't know, or, just the little shots it'll hover on, you know, on somebody's face, or on just like the small decisions that they'll make or something like that. I'm not saying that men can't have attention to detail, but,
well, if we could focus on Cleo for another minute, you know, Cleo, the last 30 minutes of Cleo, you could compare to Before Sunrise or The Clock. You know, a movie about a man and a woman walking around a beautiful city and falling in love with one another. But in Cleo, you get an hour of just Cleo leading up to that. So you don't see Cleo as a romantic interest or an object. You see her as, like, somebody with, like, her own shit going on before she walks into this potential relationship, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just this attention to detail that, I don't know, really brings to life the characters in an authentic way. It's just really beautiful. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I got.
It's one of those things where it's like you expect something like profound or giant to happen, and you're like, oh, but that's never really what the impact is. It's just kind of those small moments, those moments of recognition that person is paying attention to kind of the way that people interact with one another. Like those just small attention to details, I think makes the difference between if this is directed by a man or if this is directed by a woman. It's not going to be some overarching large like proclamation type thing. Any final thoughts on one sings the other doesn't before we wrap up?
Nope. Also a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both of them, like last week, these are all on the Criterion channel. So if you would like to check them out, please do. But Criterion, if you want to sponsor the podcast, Criterion channel sponsors Cinematary, the Agnès Varda series. We'll continue to will it into the world. That'll wrap up this episode. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we put all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Head over to patreon.com/cinematary. We should be having some stuff happening this month. And like I mentioned at the top, be sure to check our Twitter account and the website. We're going to have some coverage of the Toronto International Film Festival coming there. But thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Cindy Roberts, Harry Eskin, Hell Yeah Small World, Joe Jordan, Maggie, Pedro Seraphim, Ron Hayes, the Kittiest of Kittens, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we will be continuing our Agnès Varda series with 1976's Daguerreotypes and 1981's Murmurs. So,
Wait. That's not right. It's Black Panthers and Murmurs, which, we need
Black
to fix
Panther
that
was
on
the one
website.
that you wanted to switch out.
No, we want to keep Black Panthers. We're taking out Daguerreotypes.
All right. So, Black Panthers and Murmurs.
Those are her two big, LA docs.
So, Black Panthers and Murmurs. Regardless, all three of them that we mentioned are on Criterion Channel, which, again, if you'd like to sponsor us, it's open. Until then, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week. Criterion sponsors.